A generation of approximately 75.4 million, millennials are the largest consumer group to have ever lived, having large implications on not only the future of fashion, but the entire world. Craving constant change and newness, the millennials may possibly have the ability to make changes to many deep-rooted issues that have existed for decades. The key element for change? Let's find out. This is Undressing Reality. The millennials are a fundamental aspect of the future of fashion. Key to this subject, I met up with a group of industry leaders and questioned whether or not they believe that this generation is an important focus for the fashion industry.
Fashion, like every industry, has to always evolve to meet the needs of every generation that's coming up. People talk about the millennial generation a lot, probably because it's the one that's kind of, coming up right now. It would need to meet the needs of any generation though.
Millennials are so important for fashion. Partly, I think, because they're the younger generation, so whatever the younger generation is up to is always important, I think, to listen to. But I think millennials have also transformed fashion already, partly because of this amazing, totally new emergence of social media and what that's meant. So that could encompass things like the see now, buy now phenomenon for runway. That's very much driven by the new kind of millennial focus on expecting to have things much more quickly. I think that's a really immediate impact in the way that millennials have already really transformed fashion. But not just that, I think you can see that also in the way that some fashion shoots are also done. I've seen so many fashion shoots lately that you can tell are completely inspired by Instagram or Snapchat, where they'll have like the beautiful image and then they'll have text actually written on it just as if it was something from Snap, which is a much more sort of literal interpretation of social media and its influence on fashion, but I think that's completely driven by the millennial reader and consumer.
Millennials are definitely an important part of fashion right now, and mostly because they want to buy now, and there's this sort of need for instant gratification, and because of that, I think that's why fashion is changing so much.
Any future generation is important in any industry. They're what's going to pave the path and set up the future of the business, the industry, and the world in a sense. I feel like any generation, they have the capability to create an incredible positive future, especially now with access to so much education and technology. We're aware of our decisions and what they make, and I think millennials, if they don't get distracted by all the social media out there and all the smoke and mirrors, I think they have the power to create a sustainable future.
Oh, I think social media channels will hold even more power because I think that they are becoming almost the new magazine. Like that's how we're receiving our information. So that's not going to change. I mean, we might get a new version of Snapchat, we might get a new version of Instagram, but at the end of the day, it's about sharing, and it's really about putting ourselves out there and the brands exposing themselves in that same manner. I just think that brands that are not in the digital space right now from an e-com perspective, they just don't feel as vibrant and as new to me anymore. I only think that's going to get bigger and bigger.
I think that it will in so many ways. I think it might be slightly different. I'm not sure quite where it's going. I don't know that anybody really is. I don't know if it means that that's a new platform that emerges that seems to draw the worlds of digital and social a little bit closer together. I think that's something that's maybe missing in the landscape right now, because having a website is one thing, and that's very important for every publishing brand. You need to have a hub of content, you need to be able to have a place to drive your readers to. But something that I feel like is possibly missing in that social landscape is having a place where you can tell longer stories and deeper stories. Although people are doing amazing work on Instagram and on Facebook Live by sort of expanding the definitions of video and social storytelling. I think that's where people are. I think that they're on their phones. I think that's how so many people want to receive news and receive content.
I think that kind of direct communication, again, between designers and consumers, between consumers and consumers, all kinds of voices that can go so directly and so instantly now, that I don't think that will go away because that's so powerful, and we've seen that happen in a very short period of time. I do think that the platforms will consistently evolve. If we think about the platforms we were using even like 5 years ago, they seem so outdated. That will happen, I'm sure, to this round. So what it will look like, I'm sure will look very different. But I do think I don't see any reason for it to go back to the way it was before. We could find things out instantly and see them with our own eyes and see behind the scenes. Those things are extremely valuable and I think will only grow.
I think we are in a new era of fashion. And this is inevitable. I kind of think it's the devil, but it's so much a part of our lives. I choose to swim with the fishes. I think it's a fantastic way of communicating and driving a brand.
In some ways, to look at the way that the cultural mainstream has swung so much to embrace something like feminism, the way that the fashion industry at large is not afraid to talk about something like feminism, so much of that has come from the younger millennial generation who feels confident enough to say, like, no, you can't talk to me like that, or like, I think that there's something wrong with not getting paid the same as a man would. I think there's a confidence perhaps that the millennial generation has, even if they may not completely realize it, like the confidence of the young and the way that so many people put so much stock into the confidence of the young to be helping to direct that conversation. A lot of it is also about purchase power. So if millennials care about things like sustainability and consumption, then putting the dollars to the places that are really truly valuing that, as hard as that can be, because we all love to, it's difficult to do. It requires a commitment at a time when people are busier and busier than they've ever been. But yeah, no, I completely believe. You have to believe. Like, the millennials have the power, that people have the power to change and to make things better. I think millennials should see it as their responsibility to make things better. I really do.
As with any generation coming up, they will just, their power will increase as they become more aware, as they sort of become more active in the world. When you're younger, you kind of consume what's coming in and you don't really know what to make of it. And then as you kind of come into your adulthood, you become more proactive. So I think as the millennial generation just becomes a bit more proactive, the things that are important to them, which have been informed by everything that's been existing around them as they've been growing up. And I think sustainability is a great example of that. I think authentic communication is a great example of that. Like, those are things that are really important, I think, to that generation because that's what they've been surrounded with. They will, by their sheer behavior, affect the trends of what's happening in those areas. There's no question. Like, how could they not influence? How could they not? There's no real, like, who would stop them? Maybe the Gen Zs. No, it has to happen. So it's just a question of when and how, and it's probably more gradual than we think it'll be, but they will just change the way things are done just by existing.
I, with the bottom of my heart, believe that anyone has the capability to. I really do. I mean, when you look at what individuals have done in the past, and it's all relative to the time they're in, I think, oh my God, yeah, it's endless. And I've met millennials that have blown me away with how much they know and what they want to do. And I always focus on the positive, because if you focus on the negative, you're going to get more negative. I have a lot of faith in millennials. I think they're going to be aware of changes that have to be made. I think they are going to be aware that a sustainable future is kind of our only option forward.
I demand that the millennials make changes that are necessary and profitable to their individual desires for a better world. The millennials are going to take the place of the baby boomers. This is your world. My hope is that you will take the information and unite together to make a great world, including fashion. I love fashion. Millennials are very important, as is every demographic. But in this idea of millennials, who I think somehow may have lost their individuality, this is an excellent time to just brush that off, start again.
Through examining the different facets of the fashion industry and the changes that are occurring within each with the help of an amazing group of industry professionals, I hope that this series will allow us all to be better consumers of this wonderful thing that we call fashion. The takeaway from the series is that education and awareness are key in making a change, and no act is too small to make a difference. To check out the rest of the series, please visit undressingreality.com. Thanks so much for watching.